right, welcome back, folks. Thanks so much for being with us. I want to welcome back. We got Family Counsel's David Cox on the line. David, how are you this morning?
I'm doing good, Paul. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. It's always great to have you on. I know, we've kicked off the Christmas season, and everyone's excited. Everyone's out there doing shopping if they didn't do it on Black Friday or they didn't do it on Cyber Monday. But American Family Association, this is up on Family Counsel's website, folks, familycounsel.org. AFA has published their 2019 Naughty or Nice list. What can you tell us about that, David?
Well, just in a nutshell, this is a list of companies that, are not afraid to say Merry Christmas. That's how I put it. These are companies that celebrate Christmas, that in their advertising and their marketing. We hear so many advertisements these days that focus on holiday trees or, holiday lights or holiday celebrations. And, come on, this is the Christmas season. Let's just say it. So, these are companies that we may not agree with them on everything, but at least they'll get out there and they will embrace Christmas, and they're not afraid to talk about Christmas and celebrate that as we get into December. And, I know that matters to a lot of folks as they're doing their Christmas shopping. They want to support companies that they agree with. And so that's just something we're able to share that folks can use as they're going out doing their Christmas shopping.
That's interesting. I mean, you've got nice companies, and you've got, let's see here, marginal companies. What's the marginal companies list about?
Well, sure, yeah. So let's break it down a bit. The nice companies are the ones that they'll get out there and they'll say Merry Christmas. They'll really celebrate Christmas. The naughty companies are the ones that, they'll put out the decorations and everything, but they won't talk about Christmas. Marginal is somewhere in between, right? So some of their advertisements or some of their celebrations or their policies, focus on Christmas, but maybe others don't. They're somewhere in the middle. And I think American Family Association breaks that down some on their website. We link to it. So from ours. So, folks can go there and they can find out a little bit more, I believe, about those different companies and how AFA arrived at that conclusion about it.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Something I haven't really thought about, but it is interesting. Like, for example, I'll give an example. Bass Pro Shops, they're on the nice list. They're on the nice list. You've got Academy Sports, which is on the marginal list. And then you've got Dick's Sporting Goods, which is on the naughty list.
Right. Right, yeah, and I know, Dick's Sporting Goods, some of those sporting goods stores have drawn the ire of some of the, pro-Second Amendment folks like myself. So, it's good to be able to know where they stand on even things as simple as just, celebrating Christmas.
Yeah,
so.
It's fascinating. Okay, so then, David, we've got this other article up at familycounsel.org, companies that support Planned Parenthood. Now, this one was eye-opening to me. What can you tell us about this?
Well, this is a list we put together. I say we put it together. We started talking about it back a few years ago. Probably, it may have been 5 or 6 years ago now. It's been a while. And it's a list that's put together by a group called Second Vote. And you can find out more at their website, actually. It's secondvote.com. And we link to it from our website. Folks can go to familycounsel.org. They can find this list, and they can get more information over at secondvote.com. But, Paul, in a nutshell, these are companies that give money either directly or indirectly to Planned Parenthood. And it's really as simple as that. Second Vote analyzes tax records. They analyze corporate giving policies. They look at information that's been shared online by these different corporations about the causes that they support, and they try to identify which companies support Planned Parenthood and other abortionists financially. And, it is a very eye-opening list. I think when you look at it, you see names on these lists that you wouldn't necessarily expect, like Adobe, American Express, ExxonMobil, Frito-Lay, Nike. If we needed another reason to ditch Nike products, Nike's on the list, AutoZone's on the list. So, a lot of folks, I probably get an email at least 2 or 3 times a week, it seems, from folks who are asking questions about this list and wanting more information. But, as we get into the Christmas season and everybody's out shopping, a lot of folks don't want to do business with corporations that support abortion.
Right.
And or if they have to, they want to limit the amount of business, at least, that they're doing with these folks. And so this is just a resource we provide to people so that they know where their dollars are going if they're, going out shopping or swiping that credit card or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, this is just very eye opening to me, David. Okay,
Hmm.
Blue Cross Blue Shield is on the list.
Right.
Frito Lay is on the list. Like you said, you mentioned AutoZone, a bunch of
Hmm.
insurance companies, Pepsi, Starbucks. That's an obvious one.
Yeah.
Verizon, Wells Fargo. Then there's a secondary list, corporations that give indirectly to Planned Parenthood.
Sure.
And you've got stuff like, Bridgestone, Walmart. I mean, that list goes on. First of all, tell us what is giving indirectly to Planned
That
Parenthood look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, that's the question I probably get the most. Indirect donations are something that Second Vote tracks. These are donations that are given to an intermediary. So let's say, for example, United Way. That's the most common one. These corporations will give money to United Way chapters that we know support Planned Parenthood. And we don't know for sure how much communication is happening between corporations like, let's say, Amazon. Amazon, I think, is on the indirect list. But a group like Amazon, a company like Amazon, will give money to United Way, and then United Way will turn around and give money to Planned Parenthood. And so, we're trying to draw attention to the fact that there are multiple ways that you can end up supporting abortionists like Planned Parenthood. That could be by giving them money directly through a corporate giving program, but it could also be by giving it to an intermediary like United Way, or some sort of nonprofit foundation that has a donor-directed fund where you can say, hey, here's money, please give this to this cause or that cause. And so there are companies that support Planned Parenthood indirectly in that way, and it's through, as I said, through an intermediary or third party.
So let's talk real quick. Let's
Hmm.
talk about the idea of boycotting. As I look over
Sure.
this list, it's impossible. I don't see
Hmm.
how the average person that doesn't want to give their money to these companies because they're supporting Planned Parenthood, the nation's
Sure.
largest abortion provider, are boycotts effective? I don't see how they could be at this point.
Yeah, and that's also a question I get a lot. If it's not Planned Parenthood, then it's the pro-LGBT movement.
Yeah.
You're going,
Mm.
okay, so who can I do business with anymore? I'm supposed to boycott everybody, it seems like. And so that's a conversation we've had around our office. It's something I talk about with folks. I think here's the bottom line. We have to find other ways to make our voices heard. And so very quickly, I'll tell you kind of what I do. There are some companies that I just don't give my business to at all. Starbucks is one. I mean, they have supported Planned Parenthood for years. There are plenty of other places I can get coffee, but I don't do business with Starbucks. There are other. It's hard to boycott every retailer, however, especially when you start looking at these lists and you see, Walmart's not exactly real conservative on some issues. Dollar General's not real conservative on some issues. A lot of your retailers, especially in small towns, you're not going to have a good choice that you can go with. And so what I tell folks is be selective. Try to find I would say the least egregious offenders, and a lot of that information is available on secondvote.com. You can distinguish the company that maybe gave money to Planned Parenthood one time 3 years ago from the company like a Starbucks who's giving money on an ongoing basis. So you can find the less egregious offenders and try to do business with them and be selective about who you give your business to. And that's not a real great solution, but it's one that works for some folks. But the other thing I tell people is make your voice heard. I'll email. I will go look on the company website, and I'll email the vice president of communications or whoever it is that's in charge of outreach and marketing at a corporation. I'll send them an email and say, hey, I really don't appreciate these policies that your company has and where you're giving your money. And, Paul, you'd be surprised how often you actually get a response from that. And I won't say that it changes the corporate policy, one email, but I think if enough people make their voices heard, it might cause some of these companies to second guess some of their decisions. Might give them some pause.
Yeah.
And at this point, I think that would be a welcome victory if we could even just give corporate America a little bit of pause when it comes to supporting some of these liberal efforts out here.
Yeah, no, I would certainly agree with that. Let me get your take real quick, David Cox. Speaking of all this, on Chick-fil-A,
Sure.
where do they fit in with all of this? Because what I'm seeing is, okay, yeah, was I disappointed? I was so disappointed, and listen, I'm thankful that the spreading the gospel doesn't depend on Chick-fil-A. Okay, like I
Sure.
get that, but it doesn't mean I wasn't disappointed. because of the stances they were taking, trying to fight the culture war. And then, then they quit donating to Christian charities because they've been maligned as being anti-LGBT. And then we find out they donated to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Where does that fit in all this?
Yeah, I think in a broad sense, Paul, I never thought I would live to see the day that groups like the Salvation Army would be controversial in corporate America. I mean, I just didn't. And that's who, Chick-fil-A had been giving to, historically, I think Luke talked about this last week, they used to give to groups like Family Research Council or American Family Association. And they stopped giving to those groups several years ago. And I personally, I really stopped going to Chick-fil-A once that happened, because I saw it as a major retreat on their part, that they had already caved and compromised significantly. And, if they were just any other chicken sandwich chain, I wouldn't think too much of it. But corporate giving and this Christian identity that Chick-fil-A sort of had, or this Christianity, you could say Christian values, those were as much a part of Chick-fil-A's brand as saying my pleasure and giving good chicken sandwiches. I mean, that was just part of who they were. And so I really saw that as a retreat. I think in a general sense, things have shifted so much where, now you can't even support the Salvation. The Salvation Army is one of the oldest charities in America. And a lot of people don't even realize that they have a strong Christian element to them. They just think of them as a group that runs soup kitchens and homeless shelters. So, I think it's rather telling, that we live in this environment where giving money to somebody as benign as the Salvation Army is going to get you maligned by the left. And as far as giving to the Southern Poverty Law Center, I really think that's just another example of Chick-fil-A caving and trying to cater to this liberal mob out here.
Well, yeah, they're supporting a group that wrongly maligns people as hate groups.
Yeah.
I mean, they're giving money to the Southern Poverty Law Center so the Southern Poverty Law Center can label the Salvation Army as a hate group.
Exactly.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and this is something that conservatives have been concerned about for years. We know the Southern Poverty Law Center has lost their credibility. The kinds of groups that they now label as hate groups, it's ridiculous. And so, frankly, it's very disappointing that Chick-fil-A would move that much on the issue. So, as for me, I'm not going to be doing any business with them. I know other folks may feel differently, and hey, that's their right. I'll respect that, but that's just my take on it.
Yeah. Well, their chicken's definitely going to be tougher to swallow. I'll tell you that much. I mean, as delicious as it is, I don't know. David Cox with Family Council, we really appreciate your time this morning, sir.
Hey, thank you, Paul.
All righty. We'll do it again soon. Folks, it's familycouncil.org. Check them out. You can get the list. We showed it to you on the online broadcast, the companies that support Planned Parenthood, as well as the companies that don't want to say Merry Christmas.